Mr. Fisher, kindly read the opening statement.
The Zoning Board of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial body. It hears evidence from sworn witnesses and makes decisions as would a court of law. The applicants are here because the projects they propose do not meet the requirements of the West Orange zoning code, or they have been denied permits by the building inspector. We are their first avenue of appeal. Board members have a twofold responsibility. First, to see that the applicant is treated as fairly as possible, since no zoning code can foresee all possible inequities. And second, to protect the welfare of the community as a whole, which is the basic purpose of municipal zoning. Our procedures are simple. The applicant presents his case, objectors then present their case. Citizens in the audience are then given an opportunity to speak both for or against an application. We expect the conduct of these proceedings to be dignified and orderly so that all parties may obtain a fair and impartial hearing. As our proceedings are public, so is our decision making, which usually takes place the same evening. Because appeals from the decisions of the board can be made to the courts and in some cases to the township council solely on the basis of the record before this body, and since the rules of evidence and case law are technical, we would like to advise all persons of their right to legal counsel in these proceedings, and we, the board, will consider an adjournment to anyone who wishes additional time to obtain counsel.
Thank you. Megan, Mr. Fisher is listed as planning board. At some point, would you change that? It's Alexander G. Fisher, Esquire, zoning board attorney. Thank you. Ms. Chandler, would you be so kind as to call the roll, please?
Of course. Mr. Barbie.
Mr. Barbie alerted me to the fact that he was going to be here a little bit late tonight. So just mark him as excused absence for now, and we'll make it present when he arrives.
Yes, sir. Mr. Dannemiller.
Present.
Mr. Eben.
Here, thank you.
Mr. Ritchie.
Present.
Mr. Sussman.
Here.
Mr. Schwarzbaum.
Here.
Mr. Scott. Did he make it?
We didn't hear from him, did we?
No.
Then that is unexcused absence.
I thought I saw an email from him that said he'd be traveling and wouldn't be attending.
That's next week.
That's for next week. It
Oh,
said.
okay. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
My mistake.
I think anyhow, I'm not sure, but I think it was for next week.
Ms. Chandler indicated that was a correct statement, and I rely on her.
Mrs. Weiss.
I'm here. Thank you.
And Chairperson Neuer.
Yes, I'm here as well. Thank you all. Future meetings of this board will be held May 23rd, which is 1 week from tonight. That will be a special meeting. The special meeting is for the application of the West Orange Police Athletic League to make some improvements to their baseball field on Prospect Place. Our regular meetings after that are June 20th, 2024, July 18, 2024, and August 15, 2024. All of those meetings commence at 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, and they will be conducted on the Zoom platform. I already announced that the Police Athletic League application will be next week at a special meeting. For anyone interested in ZB 23-11, the Oliveira property at 31 Bradford Avenue, at the request of the applicant, that application is adjourned to the June 20, 2024 regular meeting. No further notice will be required. Next item on our agenda is the minutes of the April 18th meeting, which have been circulated. Thanks to Mr. Dannemiller for pointing out one correction. Mike, would you like to state that for the record, please?
Oh, sure. On the second to last bullet on that document, it said something about vegetation. I wanted to have it read that the vegetation would not obscure motor vehicle visibility. It said it.
You're right.
Was phrased a little differently.
It was phrased differently. That's under Seton Hall, Diana, and it's the next to the last bullet point.
I rewrote it and I sent it in an email.
Yes, and I saw that you CC'd the chair.
Yes. So, other than that correction, I move adoption of the minutes of April 18, 2024 as corrected. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Or Mr. Schwarzbaum, second. Call the roll, please, Diana.
Okay, Mr. Dannemiller,
Yes.
Mr. Eben,
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie,
Yes.
Mr. Sussman,
Yes.
Mr. Schwarzbaum,
Yes.
Mrs. Weiss,
Yes.
Chairperson Neuer.
I vote yes, thank you. Mr. Fisher, would you be kind enough to swear in Eric and Zabeth?
Yeah, would all township board professionals please raise your right hand? Yeah, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Yes, I
Okay, you're all sworn.
That was Mr. Edeline and Ms. Carballo.
And I believe Mr. Dockney as well is here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Chris, I'm sorry.
I'm here. That's no problem.
Okay, next item on our agenda, I'm sorry, was somebody speaking? No.
Looks
Okay.
like Mr. Even is echoing.
Jerry, why don't you turn off your voice for now and we'll make sure you put it back on when you want to speak. Thank you. Next item on the agenda are resolutions. The first resolution prepared by legal counsel and circulated to the board. ZB 23-09, Seton Hall Preparatory School for property at 120 Northfield Avenue. Does anybody have any questions, comments, suggested revisions to the resolution for Seton Hall? I don't see any hands up. I will move adoption of the resolution. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Schwarzbaum. Ms. Chandler, please call the roll.
Mr. Eben,
Now you can turn your microphone back on, Jerry.
Mr. Eben,
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie,
Yes.
Mr. Schwarzbaum,
Yes.
Mrs. Weiss,
Alice?
Mrs. Weiss,
Sorry. Yes.
Chairperson Neuer.
Yes. Thank you all. Next, ZB 24-01, George's for property at 10 Elm Street. That resolution has also been circulated by legal counsel. Are there any comments, requests for revision regarding this resolution? Seeing and hearing none, I will move adoption of the resolution. Is there a second?
I'll
Second.
Mr.
Yeah.
Sussman got there.
Good.
Please call the roll, Diana.
Mr. Ritchie,
Yes.
Mr. Schwarzbaum,
Yes.
Mrs. Weiss,
Yes.
Chairperson Neuer.
Yes. Thank you very much. The first application on our agenda this evening is ZB 23-12, Washington, for property at 4 Harvard Terrace. Counsel, your appearance for the record, please.
Yes. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Alan Trembulac. I'm an attorney with the Montclair Real Estate Law Group on Bloomfield Avenue in Montclair. I'm appearing this evening on behalf of the applicants Blair and Aja Washington. This is an application for a...
Mr. Trembulac, before you go any further, I just want to note that I've reviewed the notice. The notice is good, and the board has jurisdiction to proceed with this application.
Thank you,
Mr. Fish. You beat me to asking you the question. Welcome, Mr. Trembulac. Now you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I was saying, this is an application for a fee variance involving property located at 4 Harvard Terrace. The property is identified as block 41.01, lot 123 on the West Orange tax maps, and the property is located in the R-6 zone district. We're seeking a D1 use variance. It's the only relief that's being sought this evening. A D1 use variance to permit a home occupation in an accessory building located on this property rather than in the owner-occupied single-family dwelling, which is what the home occupation ordinance requires. My client, Aja Washington, who will testify this evening, has substantial experience and educational training in early childhood education, and she would like to operate an early learning center for preschool children between the ages of 3 and 5 years old as a home occupation on this property. Home occupations, as I'm sure you all know, are permitted uses in the R6 zoning district. And the zoning official has already determined that my client's proposed use meets all of the zoning ordinance requirements for a home occupation, except for the one requirement that the use be operated from an owner-occupied single-family residence. As I've already indicated, Ms. Washington would like to operate this early learning center in a small, very attractive 200 square foot accessory building located in the rear of her very well-maintained property, rather than in the single-family home. That's the relief we're seeking, and that's the only relief we're seeking tonight, which is the D variance to allow the use in an accessory building. I have 2 witnesses to present this evening. Ms. Washington will be my first witness, and then following her testimony, I have Alex McLean, an associate of John McDonough, filling in for Mr. McDonough tonight, who provide the planning testimony consistent with the report provided by Mr. McDonough. So, unless the board has any preliminary questions for me, I would like to call Aja Washington as my first witness and ask that she be sworn.
Before
I
you
have
go,
I have a question.
yes, Mrs. Weiss.
Okay. I'm just a little confused. This accessory use is already on the property?
No, she has not operated this use. There was
I'm sorry, Mr. Tremulak, I believe what Ms. Weiss was asking is the building already there?
Oh, yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I misunderstood. Yes, the building is there.
So I would like to know, do you need to get a permit to put this building in place? Forget what you would use it for. And do they have that?
In the testimony, I can answer it, but I was going to have my client address that. It's 200 square feet, and because it's a small building, it's exempt from building permit requirements. The only permit that was required and which she obtained was a electrical permit.
So anyone in town may build this accessory use and put it in their backyard.
Alice, not use building,
Say that again?
not accessory use, accessory building.
Thank you. Thank you, Phil. Anyone in town could put a 200 square foot building in their backyard and we don't need a permit?
It's my understanding that a building permit is not required. I mean, zoning requirements would have to be met in terms of the location in the setbacks for the building.
Alice, the governor signed a bill which allowed these, I'm going to call them pop-ups, without allowing the municipalities to have a deciding factor with respect to what they look like, where they're located, as long as they're within the setback lines. We're going to be.
It wasn't his to be used. I know this sounds silly, but didn't the governor intend for that to be for like senior citizens to live with their kids, or am I incorrect?
You're at least partially correct.
So, okay, because I think this is going to have a big play on our opinions here, whether everyone can just do this, and if everyone can
Alice,
do.
Alice, please, let's wait until the testimony.
Okay, sure,
And hold your questions till the testimony.
sure, thank
Mr.
you.
Tremblak, you have the floor again.
Yeah, the only thing I would say in response to that is it's a legally permitted building. And the only question is whether this use can be conducted in this accessory building as opposed to in the house. It's already been determined that my client could, if she wanted to, operate this home occupation in her single family dwelling, but for reasons which she will explain. And I think you might, I don't know if you've seen the pictures yet, but you will. This is a very attractive building and a much more suitable environment for young children to be educated, or again, it's early learning. Ms. Washington will describe exactly how this will operate. So,
Mr. Tremblak, we don't have a report from the zoning official, so I will take exception to your comment that every aspect of the zoning ordinance is in compliance with the building as it's on the property. We'll let your client testify, and of course your planner, and we'll see what happens with the questioning.
okay. All right, then, again, Aja Washington, my first witness.
Mr. Fisher?
Good
Please
evening.
raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in this matter, so help you God?
I do.
All right, you're sworn.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Washington, are you the owner of property located at 4 Harbor Terrace in West Orange?
I am.
And you own that property jointly with your husband?
I do.
Okay, and when did you purchase the property?
We purchased the property in August of 2018.
Okay. And do you occupy the single-family house on that property as your primary residence?
We do.
Okay. Do you have any children?
We do. We have an 8-year-old daughter.
Okay. Would you tell the board about your educational background and any degrees you've received since graduating high school?
Sure. I have an undergraduate degree in human development and early childhood education, and I have a master's degree in early childhood special education.
Okay. Where did you obtain those degrees?
My undergrad was from Howard University, and my master's was from the George Washington University in Washington, D.C.
Okay. All right. And then can you discuss your graduating college?
I'm sorry, you went out for a minute.
Alan, your mic went out for a minute. Could you please repeat the question?
Okay. Yes. My question was if you could please tell the board about your employment experience since you graduated college.
Yes. In 2004, I started my career teaching early childhood special education. Since then, I've taught general education classes, preschool and kindergarten, as well as preschool inclusion classrooms.
Okay. What was your most recent employment?
Montclair Public Schools as a preschool inclusion teacher.
I'm sorry, preschool?
Inclusion teacher. I had a general education and special education population.
All right. And how long did you hold that position?
I was there from 2019 till this year.
Okay. Okay. So, sometime in 2023, did you file an application with the zoning officer to operate a home occupation on your property at 4 Harbor Terrace?
I did.
Okay. And can you explain to the board, before we talk about how that application was determined, explain to the board the nature of this home occupation, calling it a home occupation, but just explain exactly what you're proposing to do and how this would operate and the ages of the students, et cetera.
Got it. So this is a social emotional learning sessions that will be held 3 days per week for children ages 3 to 6. There'll be a midday session for the 3-year-old session, which is 60 minutes, and for older children, 4 to 6 years old, in the afternoon for 75 minutes, so an hour and 15 minutes. And the purpose of the session is to really help children who tend to have difficulties with social emotional interactions, with self-regulation. The sessions will involve modeling, play practice, sensory activities for them to really get comfortable socializing and using those skills out in school and in the community. When I was a classroom teacher, I really noticed that younger children were struggling in these areas, and when they were struggling there, it made it even more difficult for them to access the rest of the curriculum. So this is a way to help them, give them tools and strategies to really empower them and make them feel more confident in these interactions. And again, they are for only 5 children maximum. So it's not an early learning center. It's really more of like tutoring sessions, kind of akin to if you would send your child to tutoring or to, a music lesson. It would be the length of that. It's a drop-off program. And again, the kids will be dropped off for an hour and picked up afterwards. And the sessions, as I said before, are operating 3 days per week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Okay, so I'm going to refer to this then going forward as tutoring sessions, if that's the more appropriate term. Okay, and forgive me because I think you already covered part of this, but I just want to make it clear. The age of the children who will attend these sessions?
3 to 6 years old.
3 to 6 years old? Okay. And in total, how many sessions would you have each week?
Each week, 6 sessions per week.
And what days would those sessions take place?
Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Okay. And how many sessions each of those 3 days?
2 sessions per day.
Okay. And again, forgive me if you already covered this, but the length of those sessions, what time of day would they take place, and how long will the sessions be?
The midday sessions, which are geared towards the younger population, will be for an hour, and they'll begin at 12:45. There are a lot of children that take a half-day preschool, so they would probably arrive at the end of their preschool day to do a session if needed. And then the second sessions would be for the older group of children, and that would start at 4:00, and that would be for the 4 to 6 year olds, and it's a 75-minute session.
Okay. And will you be the only one involved in supervising or giving these tutoring sessions?
Yes.
Okay. But there'll be no other employees or staff or anyone other than you?
No.
Okay. All right. So given the age, obviously the children who attend these tutoring sessions will need to be transported to and from your house, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And what are your plans as to how and where children will be dropped off for these tutoring sessions and then picked up at the end of the sessions?
They'll be dropped off in front of, in front of the property. It's gated all around, so it's, from a safety standpoint, it's very safe. I'll bring them all in at one time, and then at the end of each session, bring them all up kind of behind the gate so that no one is able to run out, and release them to their caregivers as they pick them up.
So you would be taking care of that yourself?
Yes.
Greeting the children as they arrive?
Waiting until everyone arrived, going at one time, and coming all back all together.
Okay. All right. And you said the maximum number of children in each session would be 5?
Correct.
So assuming they each came separately, there would be 5 cars coming, dropping the children off, and then leaving, and then presumably 5 cars at most coming back an hour or an hour and 15 minutes later to pick them up. Is that right?
Correct.
And you're the one who would be greeting the children when they arrive and attending to them, when they're leaving and to be picked up.
Cinnamon and soda water.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So I would like to talk about the accessory building in which you'd like to operate or conduct these tutoring sessions. And now, forgive me, Mr. Chairman, it's been quite a while actually since I've attended a virtual meeting, and I'm going to hopefully share my screen.
There you go.
I can't believe it. I had
You underestimate yourself.
I'm shocked. I have to tell you. I had my planner as a backup in case I wasn't able to do that. So anyway, I'm going to show you 4 photographs and ask you to just identify what's depicted in each of these photographs. So the first one is on the screen now. Can you tell the board?
Yes, that's the outside of the structure.
Just 1 second, please. Mr. Trembulak, we need the date it was taken, who took it, and then qualify the photograph as accurately depicting.
Okay. All right. Did you take all these photographs?
I did, yes.
Okay. Can you tell us when you took them?
The date that this one was taken, I don't have that right now. I can try to.
Approximate date?
Approximate date would have been probably June of 2023.
Okay. And
I'm looking at I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Is that true for all of the photos that we're going to look at before?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. And just with respect to the photo that's on the screen now, does this photo accurately depict the condition of the property with the structure on the day it was taken?
It does.
And is this photograph accurate as of today as well?
It is.
Any changes?
No.
Okay. All right. And this, again, you indicated this is the accessory structure in the rear of your property, correct?
Correct.
Okay. By the way, did you measure the distance between the rear wall and the side wall, on the right side of the property to determine the distance from the rear and the side property lines?
I did. Where you have the arrow pointing currently, the distance is 5.5 feet. And from the back of the structure to the rear of the property is 7 feet.
Okay. All right. If we can, all right. So I'm now flipping to the second slide. Was this taken at the same time?
It was.
Okay. It accurately depicts the condition of the property or the condition that's shown there at the time the photo was taken?
It does.
And is it still accurate today?
Yes.
Okay. And what does this show us?
This just shows the exterior of the building, a closer shot of it.
Okay. 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 Now, photo number 3. Same questions. Was it taken at the same time, and does it accurately depict the condition that existed as of the date the photo was taken?
It does.
Okay. Is it still accurate today?
It is.
Okay. So tell the board, if you can, what we're looking, what this photo depicts.
This is an interior shot facing the back of our home, and it's the inside of the structure itself.
Okay. Okay. And then the last photograph, again, taken at the same time as the other photographs?
Yes.
Okay. And it accurately depicted the condition at the time the photograph was taken?
It does.
Still accurate today?
It is.
Now you've got this set up.
Just 1 second, Mr. Trembulak, for the record. Those will be marked
Yes.
A1 through A4 for identification.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the seating and other equipment, that's shown in this photograph, that's there today?
It is.
Okay. You haven't utilized this structure yet, right?
I have not. No, it's
You
just
have it
these were
set
for
up
photos.
ready to go, right?
Right.
And is it true that you have not operated or conducted any of the tutoring sessions in the house?
I have not. No.
Okay. And think um, forgot to come back. Well, let's finish this and I'll come back to the application you submitted. All right, so this shows the interior of the structure, correct?
Correct.
How large is the structure in terms of square footage?
It's 200 square feet.
Okay, and is it one room that we're looking at?
It is.
Okay. Now there's a door in the back on the right side. Can you tell the board what that is?
Sure.
What's behind the door?
Sure. So in the facility, there is a place that kids can use can use the restroom. We do not have plumbing in it, but it was akin to an RV bathroom. So the kids do have access to use the restroom if they need to when they're with me and wash their hands. They also would have access to our restroom inside the home if they need it.
Okay. Now, with respect to question that one of the board members already asked, well, first of all, when was this structure installed?
May of 2023.
Okay. And were you required to did you obtain any building permits?
Not building permits, but I did need an electrical permit.
Right. And you applied for that permit and it was issued?
I did. Yes.
And you closed out the permit, I assume?
Yes, I did.
Okay. You obviously have electricity, as you just said. Is there any running water or plumbing facilities in the?
No plumbing, no.
Okay.
There is like I said before, like akin to an RV bathroom. So there's a cassette in the back, and you can hook up a water kind of jug system inside, but there's no plumbing.
Okay, but there's no water service, and the only utility service, correct me if I'm wrong, is electric?
Yes.
You don't have any gas service to that building?
No.
Okay. And is the building heated?
It is.
Okay, I think you can see in the photograph, appears to be electric baseboard heating, is that correct?
It is.
Okay, and is there also HVAC?
There is, right above that green chair in the corner, there is a wall AC unit.
Okay. Just a question before I forget to ask it. I think there was a comment in the board engineer's report about roof leaders. I'm going to flip back to the exterior photo number. It's been marked A1. Are there any gutters or roof leaders next to the building? Okay. And how does the rainwater drain off the building?
It's a slanted metal roof. The rain just goes off to behind the structure.
Okay, onto your property?
Directly onto our property, yes.
Have you ever seen water flow onto the neighbor's property to the rear or to the side?
No, and I've never heard anything from her having any issue with that.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to come back because I asked you earlier if you had submitted an application to the zoning officer for to operate a home occupation on the property. You indicated that you had. Can you tell the board what the outcome of that application was?
Yes, I submitted a home application form for the social skills groups. Initially, I had down 6 children, and I was told that I needed to make an adjustment to the amount of children that were on the application. I then submitted a survey of the property and showed that it would be operating in an additional structure. And that's when I received information from the zoning office that I would need to apply for a separate D variance to do so, but that the home occupation itself could be approved.
Okay, it was approved, but you would have to operate this
within our house, yes.
In the house, and you needed a variance in order to operate in this structure that we're looking at. Is that correct?
Correct.
And that's what brings us here this evening. Correct?
Yes. Yes.
And can you tell, can you explain why it is that you prefer to conduct these tutoring sessions in this accessory building rather than within the house?
Sure. Because of the nature of what we're doing, it's really important that the environment be directed towards the children, not only because it really help them engage more, but because it really limits the distractions. Some of them that do struggle with these sensory difficulties really need areas that involve limited distractions and that are not mixed use areas, that are really defined and being used specifically for these tasks, that have dedicated areas. As you saw in the picture, there's a calm down corner. If a child becomes kind of overstimulated, there's a whole group area for us to do modeling. There's an area for them to do play practice. And because of what we're trying to accomplish, it really is most beneficial to them, and we'll really get the most out of each session if we're in an area that is really designated for them.
Okay. By the way, do you need any licenses to operate these tutoring sessions?
No, not for tutoring. Again, it would be like if I were giving, an OT lesson or a music lesson, which don't require additional licensing.
Okay. I mean, this is not child care, as you understand, correct?
It is not childcare, no.
Okay.
And based on my certifications, I'm certified to do this kind of work.
Okay. And I think my final question would be, have you done anything in the way of outreach to your neighbors to discuss with them what you would like to do, how you would like to utilize this facility, the accessory building, and the nature of sessions?
I have actually. My neighbors have been a very big part and huge supportive part of this. But also very recently, a few weeks back, I had an open house where I invited the neighbors behind me, also on my street and on the street that runs alongside our street, to come and ask any questions that they had about what I would be doing, about the structure. We did coffee and donuts. About 6 families came. It was very positive. I haven't heard any negative feedback. I think people understand that this is something that would be really beneficial to the community long term. To give kids these foundational skills now is something that's going to serve them for a long time. So I think my neighbors are excited about it. And again, I'm about full transparency. So I invited them over to see it, really get an idea for what it is, and I got a very positive response.
Okay. Have you had discussions with your immediate neighbors to the left, to the right, and to the rear of the structure we're looking at?
I have, absolutely, and they are all in support of it. I have one who's trying to make it on here this evening if she can, but I've spoken with them at length about it, and they are all in support of it.
Okay.
Including the one directly behind me.
Okay. I think that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Trembulak. Let's take the share screen down for the present so that I can go through the board with questions, and if they need it back up, you can do that.
Sure.
Has Mr. Barbie arrived? No, I don't see it. Okay. Mr. Dannemiller, do you have any questions for the witness based on her testimony?
I have no questions.
Thank you. Mr. Eben, do you have any questions for the witness based on her testimony?
Mr. Chairman, yes, I do have a few questions.
Please go ahead.
I see there are 3 risers to get into the building from the front, from what I'm calling the front, from the yard to the inside of the building. I don't know how else to ask this question except to ask it. And Chairman knows that, I'm open to reworking the question if that's what he needs to satisfy any rules at all. Other director, owner of this operation, are there any of the children, the little ones, and I'll call the older ones, middle age, middle child age, because they're not old enough to be a teenager. They may act as a teenager sometimes, but they're not old enough to be a teenager. Any of these children have any physical disabilities that would make it difficult for them to get into the building and or out of the building during the course of the time that they're using the building for this educational process?
So I thank you for your question. On the website, which is temporary on hold for reasons of this meeting this evening, I do put a notation that if your child has physical needs, additional physical needs, to let me know ahead of time before signing up, just to see if that's something that I can accommodate. There is a plan, to put a temporary ramp with railings to help with walking up. In terms of additional, needs, like if someone isn't possibly in a chair or something of that nature, that would have to be something that we would discuss. Maybe if they had to come with an aide or something like that, just because it is me on my own. I have taught in classrooms where kids have assistive device and technology, so it's not something that I'm not used to, but because it's myself and 5 other kids, it is a little bit limited in terms of who we can take and what their needs are. So I do make a notation to the parents that before you sign up, kind of go over with me what the physical needs are to make sure that I'm able to accommodate.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
I'm close to your location, and I'm in a wheelchair. I'm in a wheelchair. I'm not 5 years old. I'm not 3, but I have an aid that helps push the machine. I won't say machine. Push the wheelchair, because I'm not capable of doing that either.
Mr. Regan, please go back to questions, sir.
I would like to try it out once you get the ramp, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Any other questions, Mr. Even? Mr. Even, any other questions?
Have you had the fire department look at this building in terms of exiting?
No, there's just the one exit.
It's also the entrance.
Yes.
Anything else, Mr. Even? Your microphone went off.
You're not required to do fire drills?
No, it's not a school. So just for those would be required for us if I were running a school facility or a daycare, yes. But for tutoring sessions, no.
All right, thank you very much for that answer. I think that's all I have for now.
Thank you, Mr.
Chairman.
Even.
Thank you.
Mr. Ritchie?
Thank you. Ms. Washington, just a couple of questions.
Sure.
For my education, what does it mean to be an inclusion teacher?
Good question. It means that I teach a classroom that has children that receive special education services and children that do not. So general education students, but then also children that are receiving special ed, like physical therapy, speech therapy, or occupational therapy, all in the same classroom together.
Okay, thank you. The other question or two I have concerns your building. I may be a little bit curious on this. So your building's 200 square feet. It looks about, that means about 10 feet by 20 feet. I assume it does not have a foundation?
There is a gravel foundation underneath it that was put in place before it was placed.
And when you did not need a permit for a 200 square foot building on the property in town?
No, I actually checked more than one time to make sure that 200 square feet was allowed without a permit.
I'm taking your word for it. I would have thought it would be about 100 square feet that's not allowed, because I've heard of that in the past. But I'll believe you and take your word that you checked with the town and all.
I did.
Oh, and you do have some sort of a water storage, because you've got a camper type toilet in that little room. So I assume there's a place for kids to wash their hands afterwards.
There is, yes, there's a sink.
Okay. And all right, that's all I have. Good luck. It's a beautiful looking building.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Ritchie. Mr. Sussman?
Yes, I have some questions, and Mr. Ritchie touched on it a little bit. Okay, the building, I believe one of our consultants, either the planner or the engineer, asked for the plan to show the dimensions of this building, and I haven't seen that yet. You mentioned it, and Mr. Tremulek mentioned it, that it's 200 square feet, which, as Mr. Ritchie pointed out, and I agree, that makes it about, I'm assuming 10 feet by 20 feet.
Yes.
Which is about the size of a small one-car garage.
Okay.
So this building is very small. And you said it's on a gravel foundation?
It is.
Okay, so I mean, to me, it looks like this building is basically a shed with a very nice facade and a roof on it. But it's a very small structure, and I just have concerns about the size of that building versus the number of people that you intend to have in it. Whether how many kids you're going to have, and you're just speaking about having an aide, or maybe one or more children will need to have an aide with them. So you're talking about, I'm not sure the number of people that would be in this building, but it is a very small structure. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes, please. So I am the primary person running these sessions. It's a maximum of 5 children in there. And I can tell you, I have not run any sessions, but I have an 8-year-old daughter and friends and neighbors, and there have been 5 children there very comfortably. I did try that out. I, again, have not run any formal sessions, but just in children playing in there. And as far as, someone coming with an aide, those are kind of extenuating circumstances. If there was a child coming with an aide, I would not have more than one child enrolled in a session that would have an aide with them, just because of the space that you spoke of. So if we do have a child that's enrolled for a session that does need one, I would encourage a family to sign up for another class that didn't require that, so that we're not maxing out the space with more than just 2 adults in there at one time. But it does fit quite a few adults and children comfortably. You'd be surprised.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you very much.
Anything else, Mr. Sussman?
No, that covers it. Thank you.
And now Mrs. Weiss.
Oh, hi. I would love if I had young 3 and 6-year-old children for you to be their teacher. And I think it's a wonderful thing that you're doing. You have a wonderful way about you. I wouldn't be concerned at all. I have some questions that maybe our planner can answer, because you're the first person who's come.
I realize that.
With this new little house, I'll call it. And I understand, Mr. Attorney, that she's here for the D variance. I get all of it. So I just want to learn, as Peter said, about some of the background when you build this house, just if it's going to be a playroom for your kids. What about how close it is to the side yard and the backyard? Can our planner answer, like, are there any kind of rules or requirements why you chose to put it there and not somewhere else? Again, this is not about, I understand you're here for the use variance. So could someone explain that?
Is that question for me? I'm sorry, or
No.
Or our town planner, or
I can try and explain that. So I'd have to look up the specific regulations. I did not review this. I'm looking at the review letter that the previous planner had done, which doesn't include specific setbacks or accessory structures noted expressly in the review, but I'm 100% certain that the Township of West Orange, in your code, you have requirements for how far back or how the setbacks for an accessory structure. It's probably, I'm going to take a wild guess that it's 5 feet from a side yard and a rear yard. or some percentage of the lot width or lot depth. I believe the testimony was at 7 feet from the rear yard and 5.5 feet from the side yard. So more than likely that complies. In terms of permitting, you may have provisions in your code that accessory structures under a certain size, 200 square feet might be the max, is permitted, and there are probably also restrictions on the number of accessory structures. Typically, I usually see for residential districts no more than 2 accessory structures. And on this property, with what we'll call it a shed, that is the early childhood learning classroom, and then the detached garage in the back, they've got 2 accessory structures. And based on the survey, it looks like they're both set back at least 5 feet from the side and rear property lines.
Thank you for that. And so would, again, forgetting the use, when you put that up and you don't need any kind of variances, does the town come and check that the sidelines in the back?
Honestly, I'm not sure if for an accessory structure, if they would send out if the township engineers or construction officials would come out to inspect that work, unless there's any utilities being put in. So that it sounds like they said they did get electrical permits, so hopefully somebody inspected the electrical work. I don't know if somebody would come out to measure the setbacks for a small accessory structure.
That's why a former planner requested dimensions of the building and something to show the setbacks on the site, which has not been provided by the applicant.
Okay, I'm sure she can do that. I'm very impressed with you, but it's a learning process for us about this whole, and I want you to do it correctly so that if you're the store person, that it will be done right. So
Absolutely.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mrs. Weiss?
No, thank you.
Mr. Schwarzbach?
Okay, one question. So currently you are not providing tutoring sessions to any children?
No.
Okay. So can you describe a little bit more the bathroom, how it operates?
So again, the thing I could compare it to most is if you had an RV, and so there's not plumbing, but you use the bathroom. It's hooked up to a cassette on the back of the structure, and you can take that out and then empty the contents into a bathroom that does have plumbing.
Okay. So someone will come in on a periodic basis.
Oh no, I can operate it. It's just like a little briefcase.
Okay. And so you're describing this as the fact that you're doing tutoring versus a classroom, and I guess it's a question to the planner in regard to the code of fire exits, sprinklers, and so on and so forth. Because this is I'm going to call it a large shed, but 5 children could be termed a small classroom for children with disabilities. So I just want to get a comfort level, given that this is really the first time we have an application, that what are the requirements, what we need to do to say that you're tutoring versus running a classroom.
I'll put it this way. Your code does not differentiate, at least as far as I can tell, between private tutoring versus what becomes an actual private school. I'm not sure that state law differentiates either. I know personally, I usually when somebody says tutoring, I think of one-on-one or one-on-two. 5, sure, I guess. In terms of home occupations, the only thing your code does require is that it be essentially a single operator of the business and no outside employees other than family members. In terms of, this has been brought up a couple of times now, issues of emergency egress in terms of whether or not this is meeting the fire code. I'm certainly no expert in life safety codes, but I do note that for home occupations, it is required that the business get a certificate of occupancy which presumably would then require your construction code officials to go out and check for things like that to make sure that whatever is going on, they would meet whatever life safety codes are necessary. So I guess I'd ask the applicant if they are, willing to allow the township to come and inspect the building and to issue a CO, or not issue a CO if they find something wrong.
Absolutely. I can speak on behalf of my client. And I know that was referenced in the engineer's report, but we have no problem obtaining a certificate of occupancy. And we certainly, I know my client wants to operate this facility in accordance with all legal requirements. So we certainly have no problem with inspections by the fire department and the construction official. And, I would stipulate to a condition of approval that required that we obtain any necessary approvals from the fire department or the construction office.
I would say that you need to come back and show that you comply with all of the fire codes and maybe handicap accessories, whatever is necessary, and then show it on, if there are requirements, then show it on plans.
We're happy to provide that as a condition of approval. We're willing to provide an as-built survey, which was also requested.
A survey is just a depiction of the of the shed. No one's questioning the shed. In all applications before the zoning board, we always see drawings. I don't see why that, everyone would come to us and say, as a condition of approval, will comply. I think you need to go and get an inspection from the fire department and get a sign off that for what the use is, that the building as constructed complies.
Well, I understand that. I don't understand why that should be required before the board decides the application. We're agreeing to get a certificate of occupancy, which means if we don't comply with any of those requirements, that we would not be able to utilize the facility.
The bottom line, Mr. Trembleak, is the board will decide whether or not the case that you have presented is sufficient to warrant an approval.
Mm-hmm.
There are too many loose ends. You run the risk that the application would be denied. I didn't get to my questions yet. You may want to hold off until after I'm finished. Mr. Schwartz, do you have any more questions?
I get, we're talking about aids, the question, do we have to have handicap accessible bathrooms? I mean, this is a commercial use. So I don't know this is a unique application, but the question is, what are the requirements for this type of use, and is this in compliance? That's all. That's my question. I have no further questions.
I ask a question. I'm sorry.
No, Ms. Washington, you don't ask questions.
Okay.
You're here to answer them.
Got it.
And by the way, I echo the comments of Mrs. Weiss. I wish that if any of my children were to have more grandchildren, I only have 5. I would certainly recommend that you be a tutor if they needed any tutoring. My concern, however, is regarding our zoning ordinance.
Mm-hmm.
And as Mr. Schwarzbaum indicated, life safety issues. Mm-hmm. I know you familiarized yourself with certain regulations. My question is, did you determine whether or not this is a structure that requires compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act?
Mm-hmm.
Similar to the question that Mr. Eben asked, you may be qualified as a place of public accommodation.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the case, then the American with Disabilities Act applied to you, and you would probably need a ramp going up. You would probably need a handicap accessible bathroom facility.
Right.
You made a comment earlier that the bathroom in your house would be available. How would you do that? How would you take a child to the bathroom while the other 4 children are sitting in this structure unsupervised? So I respectfully submit you can't rely on a bathroom in your house. So these are and it's not a reflection on you. It's a reflection on the fact that we have a concern for life safety, especially when we're talking about children.
Right.
I'm not an expert on the regulations from the fire department, but I would sense that there needs to be an emergency exit. I know that it's set back in your property, and the chances of there being a flood are minimal. But in this day and age, we have to be protective to make sure that what it is that we approve allows all of us to sleep at night.
Absolutely.
So my sense is that you're the same type of person, but I don't know that you've addressed. I know you haven't addressed those things in the application. The bathroom facility concerns me. 5-year-olds don't have a whole lot of patience when it comes to going to the bathroom. When they need to go, they need to go. I understand that no license is required, but similar to Mr. Dockney's comment, in my history, tutoring is usually one-on-one or one-on-two. When you've got 5 children at the same time, that's a class. I'm concerned. If there's 5 children, how do they all need the same presentation from you at the same time? That's a concern. When you said, and I agree with you 100%, there should be minimal to no distractions, but you have a wide open doorway to the outside. When I say wide open, meaning it's glass, people can see out. You've got windows, and I know that there are shades, but I have a little touch of ADD, and so in my office there are no windows. I'm back in the back part of my building where there are no windows or distractions of any kind. My question to you is: in your house, do you have an office?
We have an office upstairs, yes.
And what is that used for?
My husband uses that office.
For what profession?
He's a banker.
He's a banker. So it has nothing to do with your business. What's the square footage of your home?
We just had renovations. I would say about 2,000.
And is there an area in your home of about 200 square feet where you could put this facility rather than have it be outside, which requires you to have a D1 variant?
I don't believe so, no. Just even what you touched on earlier, with access to the bathroom, it would make it very difficult to do so.
Well, on what floor is the bathroom?
So we have a walkout on the bottom, so that is considered our first floor technically, but there is no bathroom on that floor. So they would have to come upstairs to use a bathroom on the second floor.
I have no further questions of the witness at this time.
No.
I'm sorry, Mrs.
Can I
Rice.
just piggyback on what you said about bathrooms? Does anyone know if you were having this in your home, are there requirements where your bathroom would have to be?
From the testimony, and I take Ms. Washington at her word, this doesn't require a license from the state, so I don't believe that there are any stated requirements if it's considered tutoring. If we determine it's tutoring and not a classroom or a daycare.
So I appreciate everyone's concern about the bathroom. And I also have this other thought to suggest that if the disability situation is too much, maybe you can choose to just have children with disabilities only in your home and have a special class for that and not accept disability if the rest of the people are so concerned with the wheelchair.
That's not the application, Alice. We have to deal with the application that's here. And I try to be helpful as you always are. but we need to focus on the application that's in front of us and what we perceive to be any issues that we need to
Yeah.
have addressed.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Trembulak, do you have any to redirect for your witness?
I just wanted to ask one question regarding the location of the structure, which we believe complies with setbacks. But if it were determined that the structure was too close, did not comply with the setback requirements and needed to be moved further away from either the rear or the side property lines, could that be accomplished?
Yes.
Okay, because it's just sitting on the gravel, is that correct?
Yes.
If I can clarify, I did just look it up. The minimum setbacks for an accessory structure from a side or rear yard are 5 feet from either yard.
Okay, thank you.
Except those were the side setbacks set for accessory structures that didn't have people in them. It was for tool sheds and it was for things of that nature that are standard forms of accessory structures on a property. And I'm not so sure that it would be the same if people were going to be working and playing and conducting classes inside of them. Mr. Dockney, do you have any questions of the witness?
Yeah, now that you've been going over, I know you had mentioned that it's not a daycare, you're calling it tutoring, and it's not a full day school. I think generally ages 3 to 6, I guess the older kids would be old enough for kindergarten, but otherwise they're largely the same age as kids that are going to a preschool or to daycare. If you happen to know this, I don't know if you've run daycares before other than working in the regular schools, but were this a daycare? I know there are state regulations in terms of number of children that are allowed to be in a room, and size requirements for a room, and number of teachers or adults per children. How would what you're proposing now compare to what the state regulations would be for, say, a daycare, if that's what you were proposing to do? Just in terms of, I know I'm just putting it out this way, the daycare my daughter goes to, she's 3. I'm pretty sure the state laws, as I say that, she's running in the room right now. She wants to join in the conversation.
My child at the bed.
Let's say, you can only have 4 children per teacher or something like that, so you don't have
Right.
one adult and 25 kids.
Right.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Daddy's talking about daycares right now. So,
Hello.
but how would you compare it to the actual state regulations?
Well, and
An actual
that was,
daycare or a school.
and that is precisely why we don't have the number that would kind of move it into the daycare sphere. When I was first applying for the home occupancy, that's when I was told that I initially had it at 6 children, and was said that constitutes as a daycare and you cannot have that, but 5 children or less can fall under the home occupancy and kind of more of a, you keep saying tutoring, but that's really the only thing that I can equate it to. I know when you hear that, you think of one-to-one, but when you think of when I'm working in the early childhood setting, when I'll think of when a child is going to see a speech pathologist. Sometimes there's 3 and 4 children because sometimes the work that you're doing requires them to work in smaller groups. So I know that this is a little bit difficult when you're hearing tutoring and you're thinking like, I'm a math tutor and I'm sitting here and I'm tutoring them in math, but that's really not what it is. And so kind of as far as comparing it to the ratio of teacher to children with a daycare, I'm not at that daycare space because I would not have that many kids. I don't know if that.
I'm just curious about how it would compare, because that's the closest approximation I can come to.
Right.
And,
which is tricky for me because it's really, they're 2 very different things.
And then do you happen to know, off the top of your head, in terms of daycares, preschools, anything like that, if there is a minimum size requirement per child for the space that they're going to be occupying? Although considering you're proposing tutoring sessions approximately an hour at a time as opposed to a kid who's in a daycare for
all day, right? I'm thinking that those size requirements probably have something to do with the time, the amount of time the kids are there as well.
I personally do not know what the size requirements are, but I do know there are requirements of how much space you have to have for how many children you have. And I would be curious to know what the requirement would be for 5 children, and if you're close to that.
I don't have that information.
It is a very nice looking space, but it is rather small. And although I don't happen to know the size of my daughter's daycare off the top of my head, they've got about 12 kids, but it's probably at least 1,000 square feet. I don't think I have any other questions at this time. I think all the other questions I'd been jotting down on my notes, they must have been reading my paper somehow, because they almost went through them item by item in order in their testimony to begin with. So thank you.
Thank you, Christopher. Ms. Carballo?
Yes, I do have a question for the applicant. The first question I have was that you mentioned that the bathroom facilities would be like similar to an RV. Can you expand on that? Is there I would say a holding tank in place?
There is. It's referred to as a cassette, but it's in the outside back of the structure. So it's not inside. And so you pull it out and empty it as needed.
Oh, okay. And how many gallons do you know?
I do not know offhand. I would take it out after every session, at the end of each day that it was used.
Okay. Another question that I have: are there any sprinklers in this accessory structure?
No, not currently. Not currently, no.
Another question that I have: has anyone from the building department or any township official has conducted an inspection to certify that there's in compliance with the New Jersey Uniform Construction Code?
I don't think specifically rating construction code. I have had people from the township come out and inspect it, but I don't know if it was specifically for that reason.
Another question that I have: I did notice that based on your pictures, the foundation where the accessory structure is sitting on is made of gravel.
Mm-hmm.
Is this as per manufacturer specifications?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the end of that question?
Where the gravel, where the pad where the shed sits on, is that as per the manufacturer specifications or recommendations?
Yes.
Would you be able to provide those specifications?
I can, yes.
Okay. That's all the questions that I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Members of the public, this is your opportunity to ask questions of the witness based upon the testimony she has presented here this evening. If you wish to ask questions, kindly raise your hand so that the moderator can recognize you.
We do have one hand raised, and the name is Tars. Please state your name and address for the record.
Ms. Tars, this is your opportunity to ask questions. This is not to make statements or offer testimony on your own. There will be time to do that at the end of the application. Please state your address and your first and last name, and then you can ask questions of the witness.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Newer. My name is Tars Palomba, and I live at number 10 Harvard Terrace.
And your question?
I actually have a comment, and so I will hold that until later. Thank you.
I appreciate your courtesy. This is the time for questioning. It's not the time for comments and statements and your own evidence or testimony. So thank you for your understanding. I'm sure we'll see you later.
Any other members of the public wish to speak? Ask a question? I'm not seeing any.
Okay. I'm sorry. I thought of one more area to explore with you, Ms. Washington. You testified that the children coming to your facility would aggregate outside the gate until all 5 of them were there.
Inside.
What's that?
Inside.
Inside?
Well, I would open, and the way the gate opens, they can be inside. I can be there with them and taking in the rest of the children.
The way I heard it, you were going to let them all in at once.
I am. But what I'm saying is they're not going to just be roaming around in the driveway. I think that's what I'm trying to
Well, then please explain it better, because the way you explained it, you're gonna let them in all at once.
Okay. So I'm guessing that the drop off is going to be rather staggered. Everyone's not going to arrive at the same time. I did note on the website that there's a 5 to 7 minute grace period. Please try to arrive on time as close to the beginning as possible so that we're not losing time. And then I will wait until everyone has arrived. Our gate is, I don't know, probably about 3 feet down our driveway, maybe a little bit more than that. So I can, as the kids are arriving, I can be at the gate, taking them in, we're waiting, and then I can still have the gate open and see when the rest of the children are arriving so that they're not just wandering around. We're all just kind of waiting in a group until everyone has arrived, and then we'll all walk down together.
So that there could be as many as 5 cars queuing up at the same time.
I mean, not queuing in the driveway. They could just be parking and dropping off. They can walk their children down to me and then drive away. There's more than 5 cars at a time on our street right now.
I'm still confused as to how people are going to get inside the gate.
They're going to walk their children to me. I will be at the gate and I'll receive everyone.
You would let one child in at a time?
No, not to go in on their own. I'm waiting at the gate. And then I'll take them all down to the structure together once everyone has arrived.
Okay, but you would gather them at the gate.
Yes.
So that you were in control of them.
Correct. And I have done drop off with as many as 25 children. So I'm familiar with the strategies to kind of keep everybody together and safe.
25 5-year-olds?
I've had 16 2-year-olds. So I'm an old hand at this.
My expression is it's like herding cats.
It is. It's very similar.
Okay. Mr. Trembulac, your next witness?
Yeah, I'd like to call my second witness, Alex McLean. Ask that he be sworn.
Welcome, Mr. McLean.
Please raise your right hand. Can you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in this matter, so help you God?
I do.
You're sworn.
Thank you. Mr. McLean, would you provide the board with your educational background and professional experience and any licenses you hold?
Sure. Yeah, so I hold a master's degree in city and regional planning from Rutgers University. I'm nationally certified with the AICP, and I'm licensed by the State Board of Professional Planners. And I have testified for boards throughout the state.
When was your license as a planner issued?
Last year.
Okay, and it's still in good standing, I assume?
Yep, it's still current and in good standing. Yep.
Okay. And you're affiliated or associated with John McDonough's office?
Yes, I'm an associate of John McDonough and Associates.
Okay. And you're filling in for Mr. McDonough tonight, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And have you reviewed the written planning report that Mr. McDonough prepared for this application dated May 3rd, 2024?
Yes, I have.
Okay. And you're familiar with the application and the report?
Sorry, Mr. Trembulac, we need to qualify, finish
Oh,
qualifying.
I'm sorry. I just continued on. Yes.
Yes, I can understand.
Are this qualifications acceptable to the board?
Any member of the board with questions as to qualifications? Seeing none, Mr. McLean, I welcome you as an expert in the field of professional planning, and you have my empathy for being associated with Mr. McDonough.
Thank you, Chairman.
Yes. Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, Mr. McLean, again, you familiar with Mr. McDonough's report and familiar with the application that's before the board?
I am, yes.
Okay, and are you prepared to discuss the application and the report this evening?
I am. Yeah.
Okay, so then if you would just go ahead, discuss the application, the property, the relief that's being sought, and your opinion regarding the applicant's entitlement to a D1 use variance.
Sure. All right. So, just beginning with the site, as we established, this is at Old Harvard Place. We're talking about a single tax lot located at block 41.04, a lot 123. This property contains 7,500 square feet with the dimensions of 50 feet by 150 feet. And it's currently improved with a 2-story single-family home and detached garage located at the end of the driveway, as well as the accessory structure that we're all here to review. And the property is located in the R6 district for one-family dwellings, and which has a 6,000 square foot lot area. And according to the Essex County tax records, the dwelling was constructed in 1915. So we're talking about a home that is well over 100 years old. With respect to the project, as we just went over, the applicant is proposing to utilize a detached accessory structure for the purpose of an early learning center, social emotional learning practice. Although home occupation is a permitted accessory use in the R6 district, a home occupation use is required to be operated in the owner-occupied one-family residence, which is why we are seeking the D1 relief. And at this moment, I'd like to just go over some exhibits here, just to orientate the board with the surrounding area. Oh, I can share my screen.
Maybe Mr. Tremblay can help you. So.
I was just
I got it. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I was thinking the same thing, Mr. Chairman. Now that I'm an expert.
Okay. Let me just pull this up here. Let me know if you can see this.
Yes, it started. Okay.
Okay. So as you can see, this area is just surrounded by single-family homes. We have Orange Heights Avenue to the north. You got obviously Harvard. The property is bound by Harvard Terrace to the west and Oxford Terrace to the east. And the next slide here, I'm just going to just go over.
Let's qualify this.
Okay.
You know, where did you get this picture?
This is from New Jersey GeoWeb, and this was accessed December 2023.
Did you add anything to it?
No, just the site location here. This was added here to just identify the location of the property in the aerial image.
Okay, we'll have that marked as A5 for identification. Please continue.
Okay. And I just think here it's important to note, that the accessory structure we're talking about here is not a unique phenomenon here. Since the surrounding area residences contain detached accessory structures on the properties, and then there's mainly using, but they're used for an accessory garage. So moving down to the next slide here, this is the zoning map. This is the location. So we're talking about the R6 district. So I'm just inserting this for the record here.
That'll be A6 for identification.
Okay. And I'll, obviously we've, I had the site photo of the accessory structure here, but we've already went over that. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and continue my testimony. Okay. All right. So regarding the uses here, so as mentioned before, the site is located in the R6 district, as noted in section 25-7.1 of the zoning ordinance. The principal permitted uses, accessory uses, and condition uses for the R6 district are as follows. So, as noted before, principal uses include the one-family detached dwelling, among some other uses such as water reservoirs and farm, nursery, greenhouse, similar uses, and hospitals. Accessory uses include private garage, home occupation, customary accessory building or structure. And there's also conditional uses, I think that the planner had noted before, which is include a public school and a private school. And so, yes, we are seeking a D1 use variance as a proposed home occupation. The learning center is not permitted use within the accessory structure for the R6 district. So we're talking about basically it's a technicality here. So yes, it's approved. It's permitted within the principal structure, but we're talking about a accessory structure here where that use would be operating in. So so that's it's a de minimis deviation from what's currently in the ordinance. So it's defined in the township ordinance to mean any lawful activity not otherwise prohibited by this chapter performed in a legally occupied one-family residence, including without limitation consulting, telemarketing, dressmaking, manicuring, craft making, drafting, and home cooking for commercial purposes is not permitted. With respect to the master plan reexamination report here. So the proposed project is consistent, I believe, with the township's master plan as it advances multiple goals of it, particularly goal 3 to provide and preserve adequate light, air, and open space. This is on page 7 of the report. The reexamination report notes that the current status of this goal is still valid. The proposed project that we're here to review would allow for home occupations, social and emotional learning practice to operate in a small accessory building independent of a single family dwelling, and open space will continue to be provided in the rear yard. So that is being addressed here. Goal 7 is also being advanced here, which is to provide sufficient space for balanced growth and development. The report also notes that this is still valid, and it says it's, quote, imperative that adequate open space and community facilities are provided to accommodate residential and business growth. The proposed social and emotional learning practice is small in scale. However, it will bring alternative educational opportunities for children in the township, and it will not cause any disturbance to any nearby neighbors. And I think that the applicant had attested to that a moment ago when she mentioned talking to her neighbors about the proposed structure and what she plans on doing with it. Also, this application advances goal 9 of the master plan, which is to provide a desirable visual environment. And the proposed social and emotional learning practice will provide a well-lit, attractive space for an appropriate and pleasant learning environment for the children. So based on the relevant goals and objectives, the proposed use would further the township's master plan reexamination report, and there's no substantial detriment to the public good that I see or impairment to the master plan, as the project will not negatively impact the R6 district or the adjacent residential dwellings. So with respect to the positive criteria for the record, the D1 relief is sought for the proposed home occupation, as noted before. Granting a D1 use variance, the applicant must establish both a positive and negative criteria. Positive criteria is typically achieved by demonstration of special reasons. Special reasons may be found where a variance will serve any of the purposes of zoning, or if the applicant can show that the proposed use is particularly suited to a particular piece of property. And in demonstrating the positive criteria, the proofs shall consist of special reasons and particular cases, how the proposed use will benefit the general welfare of the community. I think it's pretty clear that obviously an early child care center is a benefit to the general welfare of the community. This application, I believe, advances multiple purposes of the MLUL, particularly Purpose A for the promotion of health, safety, morals, and general welfare for the proposed use that we're talking about here. And obviously, we will address the issues of the fire code and building code. So that's that would have to be performed prior to the issuance of any final permits from the town. Also, purpose C for the providing adequate light and air open space, which we just addressed in the master plan. Purpose G for advancing and providing sufficient space in appropriate locations. Purpose I for the promotion of a desirable visual environment, which is also noted in the master plan. So the site, in the context of the positive criteria, the site suitability is not concerned with zoning criteria, but is instead focused on special reasons. One is why the location of the site is why the location of the site within the municipality or region is particularly suited to the use, despite the zoning, or what characteristics of the site itself makes it particularly appropriate for the proposed use rather than the permitted use. So here, the court has recognized that special reasons could also be demonstrated when the proposed use would serve the general welfare because the proposed site is particularly suited for the proposed use. The proposed learning center within the accessory structure should be considered incidental to the residential dwelling, and it would allow for the property owner whose profession is as an educator is to offer these services to a small, in a small, safe, and functioning building apart from the dwelling. It's a distraction-free learning environment, and it's separate from the dwelling. And if we're talking about children that need supplemental support regarding emotional and learning difficulties, I think that it makes sense that you would want that in a dedicated space. And this space is likely to find an outside location. Obviously, like a proper commercial space would be probably too large for the scale she's talking about, and the number of children she's trying to service. We're talking this, additional in an outside space, outside commercial space might be too disruptive in a proper commercial district, considering there's, additional vehicles coming in and out of parking lots that may, adversely impact children with, autism, ADHD, cerebral palsy, and they're developmentally delayed. And lastly, it's important to note that the proposed use is permitted in the zoning district and on the property, but it's not in an accessory structure. And finally, with getting into the negative criteria, so there are two prongs that need to be met. And the first is that there cannot be a substantial detriment to the public good, and the second is that the proposed project will not substantially impair the intent of the zoning ordinance of the townships or the township's master plan. And as identified a moment ago, we're advancing numerous goals of the master plan. And it will be advanced with the implementation of this project. And based on the relevant goals and objectives, the proposed project would further the township's 2019 master plan, and there's no substantial detriment to the public good, as you can see, as the project will not negatively impact the R6 zone or adjacent uses. The operation of the social and emotional learning practice within the accessory building would allow for instruction, tutoring, educational sessions to take place in a small building outside the dwelling. This will permit each use to function separate from each other without conflict, and the design and layout of the accessory dwelling and proposed use will not negatively impact the neighboring residential properties. It will have numerous positive impacts, including offering alternative educational opportunities for children and promoting an attractive, safe, and aesthetic pleasing environment that doesn't cause substantial detriment to the public good. And I believe this is a better zoning alternative than the strict application of the R6 zoning district standards. And with that, I believe that the board should look favorably upon this application and that relief is warranted.
Mr. Tremulak?
Thank you, Mr. McLean. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, before I go into questioning, it's past our 9:30 break time. I want to limit the break, please. members of the board to 5 minutes because I'm gonna have to stop this application at 10 o'clock if we're not finished. I've got another on the agenda tonight that I need to get to, and there are some items that members of the board have mentioned as wanting to see before they vote on the application. So you're probably going to have to come back another night.
Yeah, I understand. I did want to discuss that with my client during the break.
So let's take the break now. Let's make it. It's 9:36. Can everybody be back in 7 minutes?
Yeah.
Sure.
You're in recess.
Diana? You on?
Yes?
Can you, by any chance, can you send out calendar invites for all of the zoning board meetings? So this way, at least it's a placeholder on all of our calendars, and then you can update it once you get the Zoom info.
You mean just to the board members?
Right, only because I didn't have on my calendar next week's board meeting, and like someone had called me about next Thursday night, so sometimes I miss the emails, so it'd just be easier.
Well, that was a special meeting, so that would have had to be a special insert. It wasn't Diana's fault.
I'm not placing blame. I'm asking. I'm just putting in a request that if you send out a calendar invite to the board meetings, it will automatically populate on our calendars.
But here's the problem with that. You said that you want the Zoom link. You get personalized Zoom links. I wouldn't have access to that.
No, Diana, he doesn't want a Zoom link. He just wants a calendar invitation. I don't know if everybody uses the same type of calendar, but let's look into it and see if we can accommodate Mr. Schwarzbaum's request.
It's just so this way I know not to schedule anything.
Maybe I'll just do it for you, or I'll just send you one.
It's fine. I did it for most of them, but I noticed that I missed a couple.
Okay, thank you all for returning. Let's just see what we have. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5. So we have 6. We have 6. We have a quorum back. I'm doing one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Mike, I don't see 7. 1, 2, 3.
There's 7 here.
4, 5, 6, 7. I found it. Okay. 7 members of the board are here. The only board members who are not with us right now are the folks who didn't start the meeting with us, Mr. Scott and Mr. Barbie. So we're out of recess and back. Mr. Trembulak, is there something you wanted to discuss before we continue?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. During the break, I had an opportunity to talk to my client, and we'd like the opportunity to come back and provide answers to all of the questions that have been raised regarding life safety, fire issues, and code compliance, ADA accessibility, and everything. We want to we'd like to button everything up and provide definitive answers to all of those issues. So I'd like to request that the application be carried to your next regular meeting, which I think is June 20th.
Well, we have to check with Ms. Chandler because she's the vice president in charge of the agendas.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we already have 3 applications. All 3 are small residential, so.
Okay. Is there, just bear with me 1 second. Is there any member of the board who has a burning desire to ask questions of Mr. McLean before we adjourn to the next meeting? Yes, Mr. Schwarzbaum, you have a few questions you'd like to ask?
I have one question. You testified in regard to alternative space that it was not available commercial space. Are you testifying that you actually looked into available commercial space?
Sorry, no, I was just, kind of just speculating that it's, typically to go into a commercial district to rent out space, it would obviously have to be, you can imagine to be larger than what is proposed here. Than this 200 square foot space.
In other words, Irv, what he's saying is there aren't a whole lot of available 200 square foot spaces in West Orange or in Essex County. I don't think there's much dispute over that.
Okay, I don't know. You were just testifying that there isn't. So I just want to know if you did any research into that. Okay, that's it.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. McLean, will you be coming back, or will Mr. McDonough show up to deal with us?
I mean, I'd love to come back. See the application through, and see a final vote.
Although
necessary.
Although I'm not a golfer, I'm giving you a mulligan on some of the things you testified to from Mr. McDonough's report. This application will be adjourned and carried to the June 2024 meeting of this board. No further notice is required. We will not require the applicant to send any notices. And although, Mr. Trembulak, we all know that the formal rules of evidence don't apply, some of what Ms. Washington testified to is pure hearsay. And while it's in the record and while we can give it some weight, you might want to consider getting some people in to confirm a few things. Just a helpful suggestion.
Yes, I understand. That's part of what we intend to do between now and then.
Thank you for that. Okay, so this matter is adjourned until June 20, 2024. We look forward to seeing you again, Ms. Washington.
Okay. Thank you very
for your
much.
time. I appreciate it.
Thank
you
you
guys have
for
a good
your time.
evening.
Okay. Let me get my papers for the next application is DB 24-03 Rahman for property at 91 Oak Ridge Road. I see the applicant is here. Is there anyone with you, Mr. Rahman?
Yes, my architect, Charles Baldenzer, is also on the Zoom with us.
Mr. Baldanza, you're with Mr. Rahman?
I am.
And looking at the application, I didn't see no attorney with you, right?
Correct, no attorney.
Just bear with me 1 second.
Mr. Chairman, I have reviewed the notice. Sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Fisher.
I have reviewed the notice for this application. It's satisfactory and the board has jurisdiction.
Thank you very much for that. Mr. Rahman, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So good evening, everybody.
If you're going to be testifying, then you need to be sworn by Mr. Fisher.
Okay.
Please raise your right hand.
Who else is that with you in the picture?
My wife?
Okay, will your wife be testifying also?
No.
Okay. Please continue, Alex.
All right, please raise your right hand. You just swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in this matter, so help you God?
I do.
All right, you're sworn.
Thank you. Okay, so the floor is mine. My name's Greg Rahman. I've got Charles Baldenzer on with me. He's my architect, planner, and engineer for what we're asking for. Just to give you a little bit of context and background, we've lived in West Orange for 24 years. We were active in the community when our kids played soccer. Our kids went through the high school. I served as one of the commissioners as well. But I'd like to share some images with you, if I can, which will give you some context of what we are asking for. So let me know if you can see my
photos
screen.
are up. The photos
okay,
are up.
great. So if you look at the images, our property, we're on a cul-de-sac. And these images were taken by myself, May 6th, 2024. So if you look from the left to right, we live on a cul-de-sac, and the far right image that you can see is an uncared vacant property that has been there for the past 10 years, which has been vacant. This is the view from the rear of my property as you walk out onto my deck, which we're asking to renovate our existing deck. So this is the view of my backyard from the back door. And you can see going from left to right, that green fence there. You can see my neighbors that back up onto my property, and their houses are up to street level. So their backyard back here, they don't use. They don't use that space. They've lived in the property for as long as I've been here, 20 plus years. I've contacted the neighbors. They have no issue with what I'm asking for, as I'm not looking to do anything different than what's already there as far as the setbacks. So,
just so that we have it for the record, you've shown us two groupings of photographs, each one containing 3 photographs. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All taken by you on or around May 6th?
Yes, sir.
And did they accurately depict the conditions of the property on May 6th?
They do.
And as well as today?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so those are going to be marked A1, A through C, which is the pictures in the cul-de-sac, and then A2, A through C are the backyard and deck pictures. Please continue.
Thank you. So we as you can see from the images, the deck is in disrepair. It's got some holes in it that we have to renovate. So we figured if we're going to go through the process of renovating the deck, what we found out is this existing deck that has been here is out of compliance with the town zoning. So we want to be in compliance with the town to make sure that we have good use of our backyard and we conform to the town zoning requirements so we can enjoy the backyard space. So what we're asking for are variances to renovate the existing deck, to use the existing footings and substructure. And then we are going to expand the deck to the left-hand side of the stairs that you can see that's going down the stairs. It'll go out a little bit to the left. And if we can use the existing footprint that is there today, that'll allow us not to have to dig new footings on the rear or the right-hand side of the existing structure. Questions?
Oh, that's your testimony. Okay, you can take the share screen down for the present.
Okay.
And let me start with Mrs. Weiss. Questions for the applicant? I guess Mrs. Weiss didn't. Oh, Mrs. Weiss, do you have any questions?
No.
Mr. Sussman?
No questions.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes, question. Is there a property survey? One, and does the property survey show the existing deck and the amount of the deck where it's going to expand to?
It does, and we have it, and it does. Yes.
Can you put that up on your screen, please, so everybody can see it?
Oh, the architect was going, Mr. Baldanza, you prepared the proposed site plan?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Peter, let's hope, there is, with the application, a full site plan.
I know, but I didn't know who was going to talk. You're correct. The architect, we'll let the architect talk with that. Thank you.
Oh, that's okay. Do you have any questions for Mr. Rahman?
No, I don't.
Okay. What was I? After Mr. Ritchie, Mr. Even. Microphone on, please, Jerry. Mr. Even, microphone.
Okay, you can talk.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
I got my expert here. I wasn't holding the.
Just
Give me a
do it. Say
question.
what you want. Just say.
I don't have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Schwarzman
No questions for the applicant.
and Mr. Rahman, that was a very straightforward presentation. I have no questions for you. Planner, where's Chris?
Oh, I'm taking over now, Chris. I'm not. Our firm isn't conflicted out, so.
Okay, Eric, do you have any questions?
Yes, I did have a couple questions. Mr. Rahman, you said you've been living in West Orange since 2000,
Yeah.
and it's been at this address the entire time.
Yes, sir.
Have you made any improvements, or when was the deck built? The existing deck?
It came with the house.
It came with the house, and
The house was built in 55, I believe. We
so
moved in in
it's
2000.
been in 55 since the whole time.
Yeah.
You've made no improvements to the deck itself.
No.
Okay. I just want to show to the board because I just want to verify something based on some of the research I did do ahead of the actual application. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Rahman, this is your property right here, right?
Yeah.
So the source of this information is New Jersey GeoWeb. It's sourced by New Jersey DEP. So this is imagery from the year 2020. You'll verify that this is your house and probably your deck as it exists, correct?
Yes.
Okay. This is 2012 imagery from New Jersey DEP. Again, same thing. It's a little blurrier because of the context of the image. You'll verify generally right here where my cursor is. That's about the deck that's been existing and everything like that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to highlight 2007 color imagery. This is your property right here, correct?
Yes.
Okay. There seems to be a significant discrepancy in the aerial views between 2007 and 2012, which I just last put up. Can you address that if you've been living in this house since 2000?
No, I can't on the imagery.
I mean, would you agree that it looks significantly different than what the 2020 imagery did and the 2012 imagery did?
Yes, it does appear that way. Yes.
And you've been living in this house since 2000?
Yeah, we've been here since 2000.
And no changes to the back deck have been made since you've moved in?
Not that I have made, no.
Okay. Those are the questions I had for the applicant. It just seems like there's a little bit of a discrepancy between the aerial imagery that I saw online and what is being testified by the applicant. And that's not to say that the applicant's wrong, but I'm utilizing data from New Jersey DEP that's showing something different.
And we all know how perfect NJDEP documents are.
Yes, that's absolutely the case.
I think that direct testimony from an individual who's been in this town for 24 years carries a lot more weight than that photograph. But thank you for your hard work on the project. Thank you.
Absolutely, Chair.
No other questions?
I do not.
Okay, Ms. Carballo, any questions?
No questions, Your Chairman.
Thank you so very much. Members of the public, this is your opportunity to ask questions of the witness based upon the testimony which he has presented this evening. This is not your opportunity to make comments or offer your own evidence, simply to ask questions. So, any member of the public with a question, please raise your hand so that you can be recognized.
I'm not seeing any hands yet.
Going once? Going twice? Anybody now?
Nope.
Okay, public questioning is closed. Thank you, Mr. Rahman. I would ask you if you have any redirect of yourself, but I don't think that that's necessary. Who's your witness now?
That's me. I'll state my name is Charles L. Baldanza.
Okay, hold on 1 minute, please.
Uh,
Mr. Fisher.
Yeah, let's get you sworn. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth with regard to this matter, so help you God?
I do.
All right, you're sworn.
Okay.
I think you're best off by starting off with your credentials, please.
Yes. I am an registered architect, a professional engineer, and a professional planner in the state and licensed in the state of New Jersey. My business address is 645 Westwood Avenue, Suite 204 in Rivervale, New Jersey. My professional background is I have a master's degree in architecture from the New Jersey Institute of Technology, 2013, and I've had my design firm since 2014, and all of my licenses are in good standing. And by the way, I've been accepted by a witness as an architect in obviously in other land use boards throughout the state of New Jersey, in addition to this board itself.
In what capacities will you be testifying as an expert tonight?
Architecture, engineer, and planning.
Have any of those licenses been suspended?
No.
Any member of the board have questions with regard to credentials for Mr. Baldanza to testify as an expert? Seeing none, I welcome Mr. Baldanza as an expert in the field of architecture, engineering, and planning. I just want to note at the outset, Mr. Baldanza, that I don't have an expert report for you as a professional planner. Our rules are very clear that any professional planning testimony requires a written report to be submitted at least 10 days in advance. However, the application itself has what I would deem to be the equivalent of a report. Did you write that section of the application?
Yes.
Okay. So if I were to ask you to read that report into the record tonight under oath, would that be your testimony?
Yes.
Okay. In light of the fact that this is a very bare bones application, I will grant a waiver of the requirement for a written expert report to be submitted at least 10 days in advance.
Thank you for that courtesy, Mr. Chairman.
Actually, it's for your client, but please continue.
Okay. May I share my screen?
Please.
Okay. Okay, so you should be seeing the site plan on your screens. Let me start by describing the neighborhood. We are in the R6 zone. We're surrounded by the R6 zone, a fully developed area of that zone, and we have frontage to the east on the cul-de-sac portion of Oak Ridge Road. I'm not sure if I'm zooming here. Okay, yeah.
That's
So
better, yeah.
let me show you just the aerial of Oak Ridge Road, the cul-de-sac. Mr. Rahman spoke about the large backyards that butt up to his property. Let me talk about the site. The site is a 0.19 acre, which is 8,173 square foot property, block 34, lot 33.01. The property is irregular in shape. It measures 45 feet at the cul-de-sac, 109 foot at the rear, and then 131.4 and 105.5 on the sides. I'll try not to zoom around too much. So I'll call attention to the fact that the property shape, we don't have any parallel lines. We have all the sides and the rear and the front. We don't have anything parallel. Okay. Interestingly enough, the existing house that as it was originally constructed is not parallel with any of the sides. So they didn't line it up on the side. They didn't line it up on the rear. The property has an existing single-family dwelling. The tax records indicate that it was built in 1957. The land slopes from the east side, from the west side down to the east.
on Oak Ridge Road. Okay, so the water generally flows this way. There's no existing stormwater facilities on the site, and I'm going to now describe the proposed construction. I'm also going to show you one thing before I get to that, is the irregular nature of a lot of the shape of it. You can see just a quick comparison to any comparable lots around. Even the lots that are on the cul-de-sac have much more regular shapes. So just looking at this entire neighborhood, you can see you're mostly dealing with rectangles and straight lines and right angles. And we have this conforming lot, but nevertheless not a standard shape to the lot. Okay, so the applicant is proposing to construct. They want to rebuild their existing 480 square foot deck, and they want to add a 275 square foot addition, which you can see here on the site plan depicted. And you can see that what we've done is the existing deck is non-conforming both to the rear and side setbacks. So we have a 22-foot rear setback line, which is what is required for a deck, because they're allowed to infringe on the 8 foot into the 30-foot required rear yard. So you can see that the existing deck infringes already onto the setbacks on the side and the rear. Now, when we get to the issue of the property lines, what we have here is we have the 12 feet and we have the 6.4 feet. Now you can see what the issue I was bringing up with the property lines and the existing structures not being parallel, because when you measure those setbacks, you're obviously measuring to the most, to the closest point. So when you measure 6.4 to the side, there's a considerable portion of the deck is a lot further. And when you measure 12.0 to the rear, it gets better. So in a way, you're penalized because you have to measure to the closest point. So I just wanted to point that out and establish that. Now, I'm going to describe the variances that are needed for this project. It's my belief that the only new variance that would be required for the project is the rear yard to the proposed portion of the deck. So that's what I'm talking about over here, okay? We're requesting 16.4 feet where 22 would be required. Okay. In all likelihood, depending on how the board and the attorney see it, the board attorney, since we're rebuilding an existing non-conforming structure, whether variances are required for that to formalize that situation. So we could be required to make that an existing nonconformity, and whatever variances would be need to formalize that would also be required. I want to talk a little bit about the reason for the project and what we did. In consultation with the client, we decided that the decking and railing portion of the existing deck outlived its useful lifespan and need to be replaced. You saw the photos and the condition of the deck. We're proposing to use the existing footings, as Mr. Rahman said, and the structure of the existing deck where possible. The Rahmans described to me that they required more space for family events and entertaining. However, we ran into the constraint that there's no room left to expand the deck without encroaching on the rear yards and triggering a need for a variance. I talked about the non-parallel lines, side and the rear. If we were to be constrained to the full 22 feet from the rear with the new portion of the deck, the expanded area would not be at a right angle to the house. So if we built according to that 22-foot line, I mean, that would be a terrible design trying to follow that. So you can see what I'm saying here is if we built a parallel with the existing deck in the house, we're going to be at 22 feet, and then we're going to be even further. So now we're really constrained. And another issue that we ran into was we have this existing window well for the basement, and there's a drain, and it's actually a step. It's actually a door going down into the basement. So we couldn't cover that up. So again, some of the area that we would have been able to use near the house, we're kind of forced to not really be able to use it. So we certainly had some constraints there. At one point, I suggested to the Rahmans that, well, why do we need a deck? Maybe we should just tear down the deck and we could put paver patio and we could just pave the area, and maybe that would be the way to achieve what they were looking for. And you know, the more that we looked at it, we realized that that would involve grading, that would involve changing the surface. So first of all, there's a lot of expense to that, but also even if perhaps we wouldn't even need a variance, but we'd end up having to do grading, stormwater. Perhaps we'd have to maybe provide some kind of seepage pits. We'd be creating probably a bigger problem than just building the deck. And let me also point out that you can see the contours. I'm sorry, Mr. Baldanza, bear with me. Sure thing. The record will reflect that Board Member Barbie has joined the meeting. Please continue, Mr. Baldanza. Okay, thank you. And we also felt like that if we went further back, or if we put pavers in, we'd be changing these slopes, which I don't think they qualify as steep slopes as they're previously developed and everything. But we don't want to get into that can of worms of changing the grade, changing any of the slopes, or anything like that, which is why we settled on the solution of the deck, even though it meant that we would have to come in and ask for a variance. So I mentioned the stormwater impact, and let me talk about the stormwater impact of this proposed application. So this is a wooden deck, and we're building it with sufficient gaps between the decking, and therefore, my understanding is it's not considered impervious. And I included a detail here showing that we would be proposing gravel and filter fabric underneath the deck to ensure that rainwater is infiltrated, in addition to having sufficient gaps in the decking itself. By placing a pervious deck over the existing grades, we're not changing the drainage patterns or increasing uncontrolled stormwater flow onto adjacent properties. I also want to point out that the deck itself is only, at its highest point, is about maybe a little more than 2 feet off the grade. So it's not something that's up in the air or would really be visible from neighboring properties, much more so than even just being on the ground. It's only a few feet higher. Let me point out that there's really no existing trees or landscaping that would be impacted. There might be a bush, I think, on the side of one of the deck. It's not that nice a bush anyway. I'm sure it can be replaced with something nicer, but there's certainly no trees that will be cut down. Mr. Baldanza, let me alert you that we have a hard stop at 11 p.m. Okay. I'd like to make sure we get the planning testimony. Okay. Well, I'm glad you said that, Mr. Chairman. I was about to say that concludes, I guess, the architectural and engineering portion of my testimony. I don't know if you want me to roll right into the planning or how you want to do it. Listen, you're testifying, but I'd like to hear the planning testimony, okay, so that we might be able to get to a vote tonight. Okay, let me do that then. So without further ado, as you know, the applicant needs to demonstrate to the board's satisfaction that the requested variance can be granted in accordance with both the positive and negative criteria established by municipal land use law. I will now present the planning testimony as to reasoning why these variances should be allowed. So I base this on the municipal land use, a review of municipal land use law, the current West Orange zoning ordinances, the West Orange master plan reexamination of 2019, and of course the plans by my office dated 1/18/24. My testimony will demonstrate the proposal complies with the C1 bulk variance criterion pursuant to NJSA 40:55 C1 and possibly C2 in the municipal land use law. So let me talk about C1 variances. As as the board knows, um, we need to show that by reason of exceptional narrowness, shallowness, or shape of a specific piece of property, the variance can be justified. The requirement of 22 feet to the deck from the rear property line constitutes a hardship in that if it were strictly adhered to, only an approximately 11.4 foot deep deck parallel to the house could be built. Furthermore, the existing deck and house are not built parallel to the property lines, creating a situation where strict adherence to a minimum setback requirement actually creates a condition where the distance is far exceeded over the majority of the structure, which is an additional constraint on the design. B, by reason of exceptional topographic conditions or physical features uniquely affecting a specific piece of property. So I pointed out that there are some slopes immediately to the rear of the existing deck. If a variance for a rear setback were not to be granted, the only alternative for the owner to have a table and seating area to their requirements would be to provide a paver patio. However, this would require extensive regrading and disturbance of these slopes. And by rebuilding the existing deck, the steep slope area need not be disturbed. I also want to point out for reason C, by reason of an extraordinary situation uniquely affecting a specific piece of property, the structure is lawfully existing thereon. The strict application of any regulation pursuant to Article 8 of this Act would result in a peculiar and exceptional practical difficulties to, or exceptional and undue hardship upon the developer of such a property, et cetera, et cetera. A variance from such strict application of such regulation so as to relieve such difficulties or hardship could be justified. The owner proposes to rebuild an existing deck that is non-conforming. The expanded new areas of the deck are less non-conforming than what presently exists. So therefore, I conclude that we are in compliance with reason C. I'm going to get into the C2 variances because I think you can justify these variances under the C2 rules too. So very briefly, under the Municipal Land Use Law and Kaufman versus Planning Board of Warren Township, 1988, the Supreme Court found that the variance must relate to one, a specific piece of property, two, the purposes of the MLUL must be advanced. That's the better zoning alternative. Three, there is no substantial detriment to the public good. And four, that the benefits must outweigh the detriments for the entire proposal. And five, there is no substantial detriment to the zoning regulations or master plan. So this clearly is this specific property, a 0.19 acre irregularly shaped property located on Oak Ridge Road, with this non-conforming structure on it. It doesn't apply to any other property. We're only talking about this. A better zoning alternative, number two. For this specific piece of property, a better zoning alternative is provided for this property by this proposal, and the purposes of zoning are advanced, which are the purposes of zoning B, C, G, and I of the MLUL. So very briefly, B is to secure safety from fire, flood, panic, and other natural man-made disasters. As I stated in my engineering testimony, the proposed rebuilt and expanded deck will mean that no surface grading is required, minimizing the impact of uncontrolled stormwater flow onto adjacent properties and leaving slopes untouched. The deck will have spaces between the boards, which will allow the water to drip into the crushed dome below. Purpose C, to provide adequate light, air, and open space by providing more usable exterior areas at this residential dwelling. The residents of the dwelling, namely the Rahmans, will have greater use and enjoyment of the outdoors. Purpose G, to provide sufficient space in appropriate locations for a variety of agricultural, residential, recreational, commercial, industrial uses and open space, both public and private. Well, as I said, this proposal will allow it to be used to a greater extent, the rear yard, and by the applicant in their home. The improvement promotes a desirable visual environment through creative development techniques and good civic design and arrangement. The placing of the expanded deck is towards the middle of the house, as you can see here on the plan. And the deck is low to the ground level, so both of those things minimizes the impact on the neighboring properties. does not visually disturb the view from the road, from the neighbors, from the sides, or anywhere. Let me talk about the public good. The variance requested involving the deck setbacks to the property lines can be granted without a detriment to the public good. In this case, the public good can be defined as the potential impact to our neighbors. The new portion of the deck, as I said, will be further from the property lines than the existing deck. The deck is low to the ground. You heard the reasons I just said. So therefore, the requested setback variances will not result in a substantial detriment to the public good. Number 4, the benefits and detriments. The stormwater runoff from the lot will not be affected by this proposal, and existing slopes will remain untouched. As I said, leaving the stormwater flow on adjacent properties unchanged. And therefore, I conclude there are no detriments to the public good by the approval of this proposal. Let's talk about 5, zoning regulations and master plan. The West Orange zoning regulations, the purpose B is to protect the established character and social and economic well-being of both private and public property. This proposal calls for the rebuilding of an existing deck that is already in place with a modest expansion further from the property lines, fulfilling this purpose of the zoning regulation. Purpose C, to promote in the public interest the utilization of land for its most appropriate uses. This proposal calls for the rebuilding and expansion of a deck. A deck on a residential house is entirely appropriate use for this setting. D is a familiar one, secure safety from fire, flood, and panic and other natural and man-made disasters. Again, I'm repeating myself, but I'm not changing the topography, and we're staying out of the slopes, so there will be no changes in stormwater flow to the adjacent lots. And H is to promote a desirable visual environment through creative development techniques and good civic design arrangements. We already mentioned the deck is going to be in the middle of the yard. It's going to be further away. The existing deck needs substantial maintenance. The proposal calls for it to be rebuilt with new materials matching the expanded area and low maintenance materials, of course. Therefore, this variance could be granted without substantially impairing the intent and purposes of the zoning regulations. So, in conclusion, let me also talk about, before I conclude, let's talk about the master plan, which was re-examined in 2019. I'm going to say some of the goals of the master plan and how we further them. Goal number 3 is to provide and preserve adequate light, air, and open space. Again, by providing more exterior use areas at this residential dwelling, the occupants will have a greater use and enjoyment of the outdoors. Goal number 5 is to encourage the preservation of neighborhoods and the environment. This is similar to the zoning, but the plan calls for the rebuilding of an existing deck. A modest expansion, meeting the existing character of the site, will not change. The environmental benefits I said, which we're not regrading and not disturbing slopes. So that's already been discussed. Number 9 is to promote a desirable visual environment. So again, I've said the existing deck needs substantial maintenance. The proposal calls for it to be rebuilt with new materials matching the expanded area, and it's going to be low maintenance. And finally, goal number 13 is to improve and maintain existing residential neighborhoods. This proposal will further this goal by helping to rehabilitate a portion of an existing single-family residential use. So I conclude that the proposed improvements will, in fact, advance the goals that I mentioned of the master plan, and therefore can be granted without substantially impairing the intent and purposes of the master plan. So in light of the planning testimony that I've just given, it is my professional planning opinion that the granting of the requested variances is justified and the benefits substantially outweigh any possible detriment. Thank you. Is that your testimony, Mr. Baldanza? That is. Please take your screen down. Mr. Baldanza and Mr. Rahman, I happened to look at the application. You apparently forgot to check the box for amended site plan, because the only way you can build if we grant the variances is to have an approval for an amended site plan. So I ask whether or not you wish to amend the application to include a request for an amended site plan.
Charles, I'm going to say that's a yes.
Yes.
Yes, a yes. Yeah.
Good. That's a yes. And
yes.
deem it to be a minor amendment because You can't get the variances without an amended site plan. So the application is deemed amended to include a request for amended site plan approval. Members of the board, let's go through questioning. Where did I went the other way. Mr. Schwarzbaum.
The existing deck, what is the height of it off the ground?
Okay, it is, I have the finished floor at 99.5, and the deck, the grade around the deck, I'll read them to you, 97.7.
No, the height. In other words, from the ground to the base of the deck.
Yeah, it's less than 2 feet on one side as I'm looking at it, and it's only about a foot on the highest side. So I think it's safe to say it varies between about 2 feet and 1 feet
Okay.
above grade.
Okay. That's so it's very close to the ground.
It is, yes.
Okay. That's my only question.
Schwarzbaum?
That's it.
Mr. Barber, you would be next, but you're not going to be eligible to vote. If you had any questions, I'll recognize you.
No questions.
Thank you. Mr. Dannemiller.
I have one question, but it's really for our planner. This is a R6 zone. Is the side setback 22 or 5?
No, he testifies as 30.
Side yard
That's why I
setback
have the
is 8
question for our
and 10.
planner.
So side yard setback is 8 feet on one side and 10 feet on the other, and then 30 feet rear yard setback.
Thank you very much. I have no further I have no questions for the applicant.
Thank you so much. Mr. Even, questions?
There are none for me.
Thank you. Mr. Ritchie.
The decking material and the railing system, what are they gonna be made out of?
They're going to be composite, the new Trex stuff that you don't have to, the composite, the Trex material that you don't have to stain and finish, so it'll be low maintenance.
Yep, that was very important in your case, especially since the condition of the existing deck is so poor. It's good to see a long-lasting, low-maintenance material.
Yeah.
And you will have to go through the building department to see if you can utilize those existing footings and foundations, since it sounds like the original deck may not have been even built with permits. So, that's not up for us to determine. That's up for the building department when you pull your permits to do the whole project.
Sure.
That's all I have.
Thank you so much. Mr. Sussman.
Yes, Mr. Ritchie co-opted my question. I was going to ask about the materials and whether it was going to be wood or composite Trex. Question's been answered. Thank you very much.
Okay, and Megan, I'm sorry. Between now and the next meeting, change Mr. Sussman from alternate number 3 to alternate number 2, please.
Sure, I thought I did that.
No, that's okay. It's not urgent. Mrs. Weiss, questions?
No, thank you.
And I don't have any questions for Mr. Baldanza. Let's see. Mr. Adelon? Eric?
Sorry, it's the line. I have no questions, Chair.
What is
I'm not quite sure how my name got set up like that. It's just Eric DeLine, and then he DeLine got somehow put in there.
Oh, E. DeLine are your initials and last name.
Yeah, I guess that's how it worked out. So
Okay,
yeah, it's just
so
Eric
thank
DeLine.
No questions. Thank you. Ms. Carvalho?
I have no questions.
Thank you. Members of the public, this is your opportunity to ask questions of the witness based upon the testimony he has just presented to the board this evening. Not the time to make statements or offer testimony, but simply to ask questions. Kindly raise your hand to be recognized.
I'm not seeing any.
Going once? Going twice? Anybody now?
No, nobody.
Public questioning aspect of this application closed. Mr. Rahman, do you have any final statements to offer to the board?
Nope, no, I do not.
Okay, so then now I will turn it over to the members of the public to offer testimony or present evidence either in favor of or in opposition to the application? Kindly raise your hand to be recognized.
I'm not seeing anyone.
Once, twice, anybody?
Nope, nobody.
Okay, so the public comment and testimony portion of the application is closed. Members of the board, I want to get this finished tonight, so I will offer a resolution to approve the application as amended, to grant the variances and approval of the site plan. The reasoning behind that is consistent with the testimony of Mr. Baldanza. His planning testimony I found to be credible, and I would hope the board will vote in favor of it. The C1 variance, this is definitely a uniquely shaped property which visits hardship upon the applicant. In addition to which, there's another applicant that comes from that notorious couple, Mother Nature and Father Time. And I think it's appropriate that the applicant is seeking to fix the deck, make it more usable and more attractive, which is another reason for granting the approval. And the extension is reasonable and does not impinge further into any of the setbacks so that it can be granted without any detriment to the zoning plan or the zoning ordinance. The remaining reasons given by Mr. Baldanza, as I said, were credible, and I would hope that they find their way into the resolution. They were attached to the application. That's my motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Schwarzbaum. Ms. Chandler, the roll, please.
Okay, Mr. Dana Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Even,
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie,
Yes.
Mr. Schwarzbaum,
Yes.
Mrs. Weiss,
Yes.
Mr. Sussman,
Yes.
Chairperson Neuer.
Yes. Mr. Rahman, congratulations. And it was a very straightforward presentation. It's always nice when people who've lived in our community for a quarter of a century wish to improve their property so that they can stay. I know that sounded like a lot, but I'm closer to a half century. So it was a well-presented application. I commend you and Mr. Baldanza. The resolution will be drawn by Mr. Fisher's office or Mr. Fisher, and it'll be up for adoption at the June 20th meeting. You don't have to be here. Ms. Chandler always sends the resolution to the applicant for a quick review before we adopt it. There were no conditions imposed, so the conditions that would be imposed are the standard ones that we have to make sure that, well, there were no conditions, so they don't have to be printed on the final site plan. And you're bound by the testimony and the evidence presented. So once you get the resolution, then you can find your way to the building department with Mr. Baldanza's help to get your building and construction permits, and we wish you well.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great night.
Thanks, you too. Okay, my fellow board members and professionals.
Good
Once again, we've come to the end of the line for this evening. We'll revisit the home occupation on June 20th. And for anybody who's interested, the Rangers won tonight.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
Eric, good to see you.
Hey, Mike.
It
Good to
I
see you.
apologize for my delay.
was excused. We are adjourned.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.